Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to what channel am I going to put this on? Hell if I know. I could put this on one of two spots. Let's put this up on Miss Valley Entertainment News because it does deal with news, sporting news, and let's be honest here. As a fan of the NHL's Edmonton Oilers hockey team, this is not the video I wanted to make ever. I seriously hoped I wouldn't have to make this one. But I feel a need to express myself on this. And we're going to talk about the hiring of Stan Bowman as the new Edmonton Oilers general manager. You would have to be living under an extremely heavy rock to not know there has been an explosion of fans upset with this decision. I'm one of them. I'm a lot more controlled about it than some are, but don't mistake it. I am extremely disappointed in this decision. Let me just say a couple things before we get into what I'm going to do, okay? Because we're going to read a couple articles, one by Jason Greger, one by Megan Fowler, and go over those, and I will link those down below, as well as I'm going to direct you to a website where if you don't like this decision, you can make your voice heard on a petition. Currently has over 6,000 signatures. Should have a lot more voiced upon what I'm hearing on the internet. People just haven't found it yet, apparently. Okay, let's talk real quick, though. Stan Bowman. What did Stan Bowman do? Many, many years ago, for those of you who do not know, when he was general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks, it came out that an employee of theirs, a hockey player, a young hockey player, had a uncomfortable and unwanted sexual advances, etc., from an employee of the team. Do we have to spell this out? It's sexual assault. Okay? That's what it is. See, Stan, I can say sexual assault. Why can't you? Anyways, a decision was made amongst the group to not instantly pursue that. It's been put out there that someone said, "Oh, we'll send it to upper management and they'll take care of it," or somebody said, "Don't worry, guys, I'll take care of it. Go about your business because we're on a chase for the Stanley Cup right now." It doesn't matter in the end what was said in that room. The only thing that matters is, as the general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks hockey team, he had an obligation to Mr. Stan Bowman, to the organization and to the player as a human being, to follow up on that and treat it seriously. He did not. What came out of that? That same employee, who was later let go by the franchise, went on to, that we know of, sexually assault 4 or 5 other people, including teenagers or non-adult boys in a school where he went on to work. That's a terrible thing that the abuser did to a whole bunch of people, and maybe, and probably more than we just know about. The abuser is 100% at fault for this. Absolutely. But when somebody is in trouble and you turn away from that person and you do not help them and you enable by doing that the abuser to go on and abuse more people and ruin more lives, yes, every person in that room, and that includes Shoveldayoff, who got away scot-free because maybe he's got dirty pictures on Gary Bettman. I don't know. Every person in that room had an obligation, regardless of what anybody else in that room said, to follow up on that immediately and seriously. Stan Bowman failed. Stan Bowman failed his organization. He failed that young man who was needing help. He failed all the victims going forward. He failed society. Do I believe in second chances? Yes. Do I believe in throwing stones when you live in a glass house? I agree. You shouldn't do that. That doesn't mean you turn a blind eye to somebody else's faults, though. Look, I'm not perfect. If you're watching this and you're alive, you're not perfect. Stan Bowman's not perfect. We get it. No one's perfect. That's not the point. Who and what other people are or are not perfect is not the point. The point is, should Stan Bowman be back in charge of a hockey team after that? And everything within me says no, that we shouldn't. Absolutely, you should have second chances in life. Go where you want, Stan. Do what you want. Not in hockey. That's my opinion. Now, also my opinion, Stan Bowman comes out, and this is what Stan looks like. Like he looks like, if you watch the article, you take a look at the article that I'll link down below by Jason Greger, you'll see the pictures. You've probably seen the news conference. He looked like death warmed over, right? He did not look comfortable at all. He looked haunted. Now, it's just my opinion. Yours may differ when you look at him. Didn't look like a happy person. Didn't look like somebody having fun. Didn't look like somebody glad to be here. He looked like somebody like, oh my God, they're going to grill me on this and I got to go through this shit again. He didn't get grilled hard enough, in my opinion, in that news conference. But the point is, yes, Stan Bowman deserves second chances. But the other point is, not in hockey. You burned your bridge. You're out. Completely tone deaf and not able to read the room moment by Jeff Jackson, which in my opinion, despite all the great things he did, should cost him his job immediately. If you're like me and you feel Stan Bowman should not have been hired, then link down below is the change.org document that you can sign saying they need to fire him. I'm not happy. They need to fire him. It's got 6,000 signatures and climbing. Get involved with that. And in fact, if you really want to get involved, if you really have a stand and you're taking a stand, you're saying sexual assault is wrong and enabling sexual assault is wrong, then what you need to do is find out who supplies money to the Oilers. Who are they in bed with, in partnership with? Who are their corporate sponsors? Who are the people who advertise with them? And go directly to those people and ask them the hard questions. Call them out. Put the pressure on them, because when one of them or two of them or three of them say to the Oilers, yeah, we have to drop you, we can't do this, that's when Stan Bowman gets let go. Not before, because money talks, bullshit walks. And in life and in business, everything that's not money is bullshit, according to, the corporates. So get involved, do your part. Now we're going to check out two articles, and I'm going to read them. Again, I'll read them all the way through verbatim, and we'll discuss as we go. I will link these down below as well so you can read them. As I said, one is by Jason Greger. It's on OilersNation.com where I got it. And the other one is by Megan Fowler, and that is on the oilrig.ca. So the first article by Jason Greger is called, As Oilers GM, Stan Bowman Must Walk the Walk. Says the Edmonton Oilers hired Stan Bowman as the team's 11th general manager in franchise history yesterday. He spent 20 years with the Chicago Blackhawks, starting as a special assistant to the general manager for 4 seasons. Then he spent 2 seasons as director of hockey operations, another 2 as assistant general manager before being named general manager July 14th, 2009. Now, Bowman won 3 cups for the Blackhawks in 2010, 2013, and 2015, but then missed the playoffs in 3 of his 4 final seasons. I'll bring the article up so you guys can see it as well. There's the picture of Stan. Doesn't he look happy? No, he fucking doesn't. Just like nobody else is happy he's here. No offense to him. He might be a nice person. Still does not mean he should be back in hockey. No. Okay. Bowman played a role in the Blackhawks' rise in the early 2000s before winning 3 cups in 6 seasons. I recognize the Oilers hired him to hopefully help them win a Stanley Cup, and I understand that will be his main focus. But it can't and shouldn't be his only focus. The phrase, with great power comes great responsibility, is how I view Bowman's hiring. For full transparency, I wrote earlier this month asking if it was worth the risk to hire Bowman. I said I wouldn't do it. My mind has not changed. However, after listening to Bowman speak at his opening press conference about how he aired, what he has learned, and the work he did with Sheldon Kennedy, I see potential in how this hiring could make a difference that is much larger than hockey. And I agree, as long as he's still sitting in that general manager's chair, he should be doing everything he possibly can to change the culture in hockey. That should be his first duty. Absolutely agree with that. However, I also think he shouldn't be sitting his butt in the chair at all. The article. The Oilers want to win. Their fans want them to win. I get that, but why can't they strive to do that while also becoming a leader in changing the culture of both hockey and society? Bullying, hazing, and harassment happen more often in hockey than sexual abuse, so we assume. But the latter is often the most damaging long term. We've learned how sexual abuse can actually alter the wiring in the brain of the survivor and can drastically change the rest of their life. By the way, if you're poo-hooing sexual abuse or people who've gone through it, fuck you. You're an idiot. It is horrendously traumatic, and while many victims of sexual abuse survive, sadly, many of them still live with fear, pain, embarrassment, self-doubt, and unhappiness. I can only fucking imagine. The ripple effects of sexual abuse spread across our society. It can lead to addiction, anger, and in some cases, becoming the predator. It is a cycle that needs to stop, and the biggest positive that could come from Bowman's hiring is that he uses his platform to push for change in hockey. Hopefully that leaks into all areas of society. We are naive to think bullying, harassment, hazing, and sexual abuse occurs more in hockey than in other walks of life. Sadly, it exists everywhere. In your neighborhood, in your community, and for some who are reading this in their own life and house, the data surrounding sexual abuse is grotesque. They say 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys are victims, and the majority of abuse to children happens from someone in their home, a caregiver, or someone they know. The amount of trauma that spreads across society is unimaginable. It is why so many prefer to keep quiet. Now, great, Stan Bowman has an opportunity as someone who's worked for 6 months with Sheldon Kennedy and someone who's talked to the Kyle Beach, the young man who this Blackhawks employee at the time abused. Sure, he's got a great opportunity now to make changes. That is true. However, I want you to note something very closely. When Point Blank asked both him and Jeff Jackson whether or not anyone had contacted the other victims, the answer is no. They have not reached out to the other victims. The Oilers haven't, and Stan Bowman hasn't. Huh. That's not showing a lot of fucking compassion, is it? You know what else happened in the news conference there, press conference, announcing Stan and putting him in charge? Nobody on him or the Oilers used the words sexual assault or sexual abuse ever. They said, the bad thing that happened to Kyle Beach. Oh, the terrible thing that happened to Kyle Beach. It'll never happen again. No one said sexual abuse or sexual assault once, let alone rape. None of those words were ever spoken. This is a man who can't even say the words of what happened to Kyle Beach. This is a man who has never gone to any of the other victims and apologized or anything else, despite the fact that he is partially at fault for what happened to them. Another thing to note, he's been out of hockey for 2.5 years, but he worked with Sheldon Kennedy for the last 6 months or so and then got this job after he was reinstated by the league. What did he do for the first 2 years, people? Some of you are going to tell me, Dredd, clearly he was sitting at home for 2 years in stress and trauma, moaning and crying over the mess he had made of other people's lives. I call bullshit if you say that. What was he doing for the first 2 years, people? What was he doing for the first fucking 2 years that he was off? He's a millionaire. What was he doing? Because it wasn't what he did in the last 6 months. By the way, the last 6 months after Jeff Jackson was hired, Jeff Jackson, who knows this man, Stan Bowman, from back in their past, and has even said, I kept in touch with them. If you think for a second Jeff Jackson did not reach out to Stan Bowman and say, hey, I've been talking to Gary Bettman. I really want to hire you as the new GM because our guy's stepping down. Everybody's heard that. At the end of the season, he's stepping down. We need a new GM. We need someone to take us to the promised land if we don't get there this year. I want to do you. Gary says, I can't quite do it yet. You guys haven't shown enough remorse. So please go put yourself in a program. Hey, maybe work with Sean Kennedy for 6 months. And then when you're out of that, Gary will reinstate you and we can hire you. Prove to me that didn't happen. Go ahead. I'm waiting. I'm asking you again. Does this whole situation sound like someone who's honestly feels bad about what happened? I don't see it. I don't hear it. I don't smell it. I don't taste it. Where is it? Back to the article. Bowman and the Chicago Blackhawks made a brutal error in how they handled the Kyle Beach and the sexual abuser case. I'm not going to say his name. The abuser is a pedophile and a menace to society. They not only didn't protect Beach, but when they let Aldrich go, oops, I said his name, fuck. Best intentions. They kept quiet about his actions. Their silence became catastrophic a few years later. They said nothing when he was hired to work with young boys. He is a predator who looked for and found victims. He had 2 different accusations while he worked hockey camps in Miami, although neither resulted in charges. And then while volunteering as a coach for the Houghton High School team, the abuser was charged with sexually assaulting one of the players after a party. He pleaded guilty to 4th-degree criminal sexual assault and was sentenced to 9 months in jail. His victim, John Doe II, recently settled a civil lawsuit with the Blackhawks, and he signed an NDA so that until that is removed, he nor his family can speak about what happened. And it seems like neither can Stan Bowman. Or doesn't want to, or doesn't choose to. To read the full Jenner and Block report about how Chicago's response to the allegations here, blah, blah, blah. The majority of the Jeff Jackson and Stan Bowman press conference focused on sexual abuse, as it should have. In this case, hockey takes a back seat. Sad truth is, many in society have sat in silence when they saw, heard, or suspected sexual abuse was happening. Sheldon Kennedy is a partner with Respect Group, Inc., and they have worked with thousands of people involved in amateur sports and education on how to prevent bullying, harassment, and abuse. I asked him how we get bystanders to talk about abuse. He said, it is very difficult. What we try to do is create confidence around discussions and these issues. We need to build confidence around these issues that predominantly carry a lot of fear. My first counseling session, I was asked how I felt, and I had no clue how to explain how I felt. Over time, I kept going back, and I learned how to describe how I feel. It takes time. In an organization, we need to be able to prioritize a psychological safety, have clear direction of practice these types of tools in the group. If an incident like this happens, there is confidence in the group that it isn't the elephant in the closet. We know clearly how to address it and how to communicate it. I don't have any problem with what he's saying. Mr. Gregor goes on, I will be evaluating Bowman as much on how he goes about supporting and educating those on sexual abuse as I will his signings, trades, and drafting. It would be a lot better if he had actually reached out to any of the other victims or he ever said the word sexual abuse, sexual predator, sexual assault, rape, or anything else. How could he instill confidence in the organization and be able to talk about this when he can't talk about it? I smell a skunk in a pack of kittens. This, people, mark my words, is not going to go well for the Oilers. Not at all. Says Bowman was quite transparent at his press conference. I don't think he was at all, Jason Gregor. He admitted his errors, sure, and he spoke passionately about what he learned working with Kennedy and others the past 2 years. I don't think I saw any passion at all from him. He was stone-faced and bored. I said this directly to Kyle in person. I'll repeat it for those here today and watching, said Bowman. My response in 2010 was inadequate. You think? I should have handled it better? Really? And done more? You don't say. Have you expressed that to all the other victims? No. No, you haven't. I've had the chance to learn things I didn't know from speaking to Kyle and working with Sheldon. I'm looking forward to making a difference in the organization. I want to make things better. The only way to do that is to learn from his mistakes and do better. I see zero signs he's learned from his mistakes. I see a sign that he took an offer from Jeff Jackson to be GM of the Oilers, knowing he needed to get in Gary's good books. He went and worked with Sheldon Kennedy for 6 months, got reinstated, and got a very cushy job in the NHL again. One that he should never have been offered. Saying it is one thing, but I will need to see him take action. Being named GM of one of the best teams in the NHL with the greatest player on the planet, he has an opportunity to use his platform to help educate those about the ugliness of sexual abuse and to support the survivors. It can't be once a year. It will need to be continual and ongoing for this hire to make sense. It'll never make sense. I think he is in a position to create and push change, and we need that in this space, said Kennedy. He can't bluff his way through this. Really, because I think he kind of is. You can't talk your way through it. You have to walk the walk. That last line will be the ultimate evaluation point for me when it comes to Bowman. I realize he is GM of an NHL hockey club and their goal is to win. That doesn't mean two things can occur simultaneously. I see no reason why Bowman can't try and help the Oilers win a cup while also doing his part to help the millions of sexual abuse survivors. I'd argue the latter is more important. Definitely is. In fact, that's probably what he should have done, is actually got himself a paid or continued volunteer position with one of those organizations and work for them for a couple of years, not just the 6 months he needed to get Gary's good book so you could get reinstated. Some of you suggest that those reading this will suggest the last statement isn't fair. That isn't his job. I politely disagree. After what happened to Beach and the other victims of the sexual abuser, it became Bowman's responsibility. He owes it to Beach and all the other survivors to use his platform and position to educate and lead change. You mean those other survivors he's never fucking reached out to? Those ones? If he's never reached out to them, he's never taken any responsibility for what happened to them. None. Zero. Bowman is well aware that many disagree with his hiring. I respect people's opinion and those who have reservations. I understand why they do, said Bowman. One thing I've learned over time is very difficult to try and talk people into things. Yeah. I'm not going to try and make an argument into why they should feel a certain way. I respect that. My job is to win them over, and the goal is to try to do it through my actions as opposed to what you're saying. I want to try to earn the respect over time. It might not come right away, and that's okay. I'm here to make a difference, make the team better on the ice, but also to bring change and a positive environment around the whole team. It will start with being vocal. I asked Bowman about what he learned about the destructive silence of not speaking about Beach, but also saying nothing to others about the abuser, and that led to him abusing others, which he won't really say anything about, because he doesn't. So he says, the biggest thing I learned is a negative power of silence and not taking a bigger role. That is what I reflect on when I look back. You don't want to assume other people are doing things to stop abuse. You want to take an active role and make sure that things happen that are supposed to happen. It was a learning experience. Sheldon said there's a bystander effect. You want to make sure you do what you can to play a part in an active role in those situations. End quote. All I see him doing is saying, I take responsibility for the fact that I didn't act when I was told about this. But he's not taking responsibility for anything that happened through and after his inactions. Nothing. Not a thing. Not one thing. Says, will you be able to use your position as GM to further the cause? If so, how? I want to, said Bowman. What I really believe in is this ability to make change and learn from situations and grow from them. The other thing Sheldon and I talked a lot about, this is what the charter also helps, is certainly what happened to Sheldon, what happened to Kyle is terrible, but fortunately not as common as other things that happen on teams like bullying, harassment, hazing. These things are more common. We want to get rid of it all. Sure, not just what happened to Sheldon, what happened to Kyle, as these are all clearly awful situations. Ones that he can't even voice, though. He can't even say the fucking words. The charter works to look at a team where maybe you don't have the sexual abuse going on. You have other things that could tear at the fabric of the culture in your team. You don't want to focus on just one thing. You need to be aware of all of it. So it sounds like he was aware of how his hiring was viewed. Some feel he showed remorse and is due the opportunity. Others feel he shouldn't have been hired. Both views are valid, but now that he's been hired, I hope he follows through with his words from yesterday. And I hope he gets his ass handed to him, because he never should have been there. And Jeff Jackson, you should be on your way out as well. Tone-deaf hiring. Says, I know yesterday was difficult for some. There are many things in the world I don't have a good grasp on. well aware and quite empathic, to those who have survived sexual abuse. He goes on to say that his mother is a survivor, blah, blah, blah. She's written 3 books about her journey. He speaks about that. Okay. So yesterday, he had 3 people send him direct messages or emails thanking him for the questions he asked Stan. They showed how it was quite triggering for them because they were survivors of abuse and sexual abuse at a young age. I love my job writing and talking to the radio about sports is great, but I'm also aware there are much more serious and impactful conversations that need to occur to make our world a better place. Sexual abuse is one of them. Hope all the survivors who read this know that we are here for you. We are listening. Proud of you for getting up every day and pushing through. Hear, hear. I will never truly understand the pain and hurt you feel, but after many conversations with my mother and reading her books, I got a better understanding of what you're going through. I applaud your courage and strength to heal, and remember, you deserve and are worthy of happiness. There's 184 effing comments on there. I bet you 75% of them are, what the fuck did the Oilers just do? Now let's go on to this article over here on the oilrig.ca. This is called, It Was Always Going to Be Stan Bowman. This is by Megan Fowler. Again, I'm reading these articles because they are 2 good looks at this from 2 pretty good writers on this, I think. In what has been a poorly kept secret for weeks now, the Oilers have hired Stan Bowman as their general manager. Stan Bowman, the former Blackhawks GM, who is responsible for an, in his own words, inadequate, read non-existent, response to allegations of sexual abuse at the hands of Chicago's then video coach. Stan Bowman, who was banned from the NHL because of his insufficient response to these allegations and subsequently reinstated only 2 weeks ago, is now the GM of the Edmonton Oilers. Stan Bowman is back in the NHL, allowed to restart his career after doing the work to atone for his sins which led to the sexual abuse of at least 2 Chicago Blackhawks prospects, 2 students at Miami University, and at least 1 high school hockey player. That's Stan Bowman. Let me just rephrase this. Go over this again. Stan Bowman's sins are such that they led to the sexual abuse of 2 Chicago Blackhawks prospects, 2 students at Miami University, and at least 1 high school hockey player that we know of. That's only what we know of, and it's probably only the tip of the iceberg. Let's be honest. Most of this stuff never gets reported. In a press conference to officially announce his hiring, Oilers CEO Jeff Jackson essentially avoided answering any questions about Bowman's involvement in what happened to Kyle Beach, a phrase that we use far too many times for my liking, by basically telling everyone that Stan has done the work and we are happy to have him here because he's a hockey man and knows how to win. Prior to the announcement, Jackson made his Twitter account private. Presumably because he knows that this is an indefensible choice. In other words, Jeff Jackson doesn't want to deal with the backlash from this. He went into hiding in advance. What does this tell you, people? Let this sink in for a bit. There's nothing to say about it other than Bowman should not be allowed to be the GM of an NHL team. I agree. Even if Gary Bettman thinks he should. There are very few places a man who both ignored and enabled sexual abuse would get a second chance. Yet for some reason, the Oilers are the launch pad for the Bowman redemption tour. Without rehashing much of the discussion from Twitter, unsurprisingly divided between people who think this is fine and we should all just stick to sports, and people who are outraged at the hire. The thing that stands out most is how indirectly both Jackson and Bowman talked about the situation that led to Bowman being banned from the NHL. Jason Greger, in his questioning, did call it sex abuse, but vague references to what happened to Kyle were the only answers given. Fucking cowards. Fucking cowards. What happened to Kyle Beach is that he was sexually abused by the video coach for the team he played for. It was and continues to be awful. The work he has had to do to live with that trauma is monumental. When he first came forward in 2021 as the John Doe in the complaint against the Blackhawks, he said, "I am a survivor. I buried this for 10 years, 11 years, and it's destroyed me from the inside out. I want everyone to know, in the sports world and in the world, that you're not alone." That's what happened to Kyle Beach. That's the thing that neither Jeff Jackson nor Stan Bowman could say, and I don't think they are actually ready to grapple with the severity of it just yet. I agree. You can't even say it. You can't even talk about it. You can't face it. You have not dealt with it. Sure, you can argue Bowman served his time, so to speak, and will very hopefully take things more seriously going forward. But the fact that in this introductory press conference where he knew that he would be asked tough questions about it, he couldn't even utter the words sexual abuse or sexual assault suggests that the work he's supposedly done to be reinstated hasn't actually sunk in. In the press conference, Bowman said the following: I said this to Kyle, and my response in 2010 was inadequate. I should have handled it better and done more. I've had the chance to learn things I don't know from speaking to Kyle and working with Sheldon. I'm looking forward to making a difference in the organization. I want to make things better. And the only way to do that is to learn from my mistakes and do better. What Bowman did not say is what it means to do better. Does that mean that he will follow a proper procedure and report an allegation of sexual abuse if it comes to light? Will he believe the victim next time? Will he refuse to sweep the allegations under the rug and not wait until the playoffs to deal with something? No one knows, and Bowman was not offering any details. Jackson's job is to build a Stanley Cup champion roster, and he believes wholeheartedly that Bowman is the guy to do that. He made sure that everyone knows that he did reach out to Kyle and they spoke, and Kyle gave him a positive approval to have Stan reinstated in the NHL. There is no amount of mental gymnastics that will convince me that Jackson wouldn't have hired Bowman anyways. Frank Saravalli and other insiders, all of whom promised to do better themselves when Beach was named as the victim, began speaking about the possibility of Bowman being hired as soon as it was announced he would be eligible for reinstatement on July 10th. The writing was on the wall as soon as the Franks and Elliots of the hockey world started talking about Bowman as a candidate. But don't worry, Jackson had a process. He told the assembled media, I want to be clear, what happened to Kyle Beach was wrong and handled poorly. Part of my process was speaking to Sheldon Kennedy about Stan and learning all the work he has done. What happened to Kyle Beach was wrong and handled poorly. That is the most underhanded and stupid-ass thing to say. If that's the only thing you could have said, you might as well stayed home and not said anything, Jeff Jackson. That is fucking terrible. That is like saying the least. Oh my word. There was a massive explosion at the school and all those children died. Well, I'm very sorry to hear. I'm sure, some of the parents would have loved to see the test results from some of their kids, but what happened, right? I don't believe Jeff Jackson or Stan Bowman has any compassion at all. I really don't. What none of the media bothered to ask was, what exactly is the work you were both referencing? We still don't know. We will probably never know because that's not germane to building a winning team. Something else is apparently not germane to building a winning team was reaching out to the other man abused by the abuser. When asked if he had done so, Jackson's response was, as far as the second victim, I don't think anyone knows who that is. Maybe Jackson doesn't know, but the law firm representing the gentleman does, and everyone knows who they are. Emily Kaplan wrote about the second lawsuit against the Blackhawks filed in November 2023. The details are shocking to say the least. In her article, she also references a high school player who was sexually assaulted by the abuser, an offense for which he served time and is now registered as a sex offender. While investigating the claim, police in Houghton, Michigan, I believe, Michigan, anybody? Recorded 5 other allegations against the abuser, all reportedly taking place after he left the Blackhawks organization. He also sexually assaulted 2 men at Miami University, both of whom came forward. The Stan Bowman that the Oilers hired is responsible for perpetuating sexual abuse across the Midwest. Nope, he wasn't the abuser himself, but he enabled it. Had the allegations against Aldrich, the abuser, been dealt with in a timely and appropriate manner in 2010, he would not have had the freedom to work in the capacity as a coach at either the high school or university level. Thank you. There is nothing to suggest he wouldn't have abused others anyways, but at the very least, his ties to the hockey community would have been severed. For the Oilers organization to essentially admit that what happened in 2010 and 2012 and 2013 doesn't matter shows a stunning lack of empathy from those in charge. Just because Bowman was able to sweep it under the rug does not mean the survivors can. Even if Kyle Beach, one of 5 known victims, gave his blessing for the Oilers to hire Bowman, the best decision they could have made was to hire literally anyone else. You have not even talked about if he's qualified for this job. I don't think he is. Many, many better picks than him. The optics of this decision are poor at best. If it was any other market, I'm sure the media might actually push a little bit. Since this is Edmonton, however, they're already familiar with the taste of Jackson's boots. Thank you, Emily, for writing that. Emily? Oh, sorry, it was my mistake. Megan Fowler, thank you so much for writing that article. I did enjoy it. People, I'm going to link these 2 articles down below, as well as the change.org petition that I hope you will sign and get involved in. Again, if you're against this hiring and you're against what's gone on and you're against what this hiring says, please reach out to the corporations who support and the Oilers, who partner with the Oilers, who advertise with the Oilers, and put the pressure on them. That's where change will happen. Honestly, reaching out to the Oilers will do absolutely jack shit nothing. They've already showed they don't care. They just don't give a fuck. So, from Miss Valley Entertainment News, my name is Dread. That's my take on the hiring of Stan Bowman. I am ashamed of this organization, and I mean that. Good night.